The night was quiet in Anchorage, Alaska. Snow had fallen all day, coating the town in white. Streetlights glowed weakly through the storm, and most families were asleep in their homes. But at one small house, tucked into a suburban neighborhood, the silence was about to be broken. The front door burst open with a crash. FBI agents stormed in, shouting commands, their guns drawn. FBI, hands up, don't move! Inside, a man stood at the kitchen counter. He froze, his hand still on the cup of coffee he had been holding. But unlike most people caught off guard, he didn't scream or protest. He didn't look shocked or even afraid. He just set the cup down slowly and raised his hands in the air, calm as stone. This was Israel Keyes. To his neighbors, he was the quiet handyman who fixed roofs and built fences. To the FBI, he was about to become one of the most terrifying names in modern criminal history. As agents spread through the house, they noticed strange details. A shed filled with tools that didn't match the jobs he worked. Bundles of cash hidden under a floorboard. Maps with circles drawn around towns scattered across the country. And then, tucked away in dark corners, things that made even the most seasoned investigators feel a chill run down their spines. Duct tape, gloves, guns, rope. An agent whispered under his breath, "This guy's been preparing for something. For years." What no one knew yet, not the officers, not the neighbors watching from behind their curtains, was just how far Israel Keyes' secrets went. He wasn't just another small-town criminal. He wasn't a man who lost control one night and made a mistake. He had been living a double life, one so carefully constructed that even the FBI had missed it for nearly a decade. The truth was about to come out, and when it did, it would shock the entire country. But to understand how Israel Keyes managed to outsmart the FBI for so long, we have to go back to the beginning. Back to where it all started, hidden deep in the quiet woods of the Pacific Northwest. Israel Keyes was born in 1978 in a small town in Utah, not long after his family moved north into the forests of Washington state. They lived in isolation, far from neighbors, far from towns, far from anyone who could see what was happening behind closed doors. Their cabin had no electricity, no running water. The family grew their own food and raised their children without outside influence. In those woods, Israel grew up surrounded by silence. He didn't have friends to play with. He didn't go to school like other kids. Most of the world he knew came from the forest, from animals, from the stillness of the land around him. And as he got older, that silence started to twist into something darker. He began experimenting with cruelty. At first, it was small, hurting animals, tying them up, watching how they reacted. To most people, these are warning signs that something is terribly wrong. But in the isolation of the wilderness, no one saw. No one stopped him. Israel was discovering something about himself, something dangerous. He liked control, he liked the feeling of power. And once he realized he could take it, he never forgot that feeling. As a teenager, his family eventually moved closer to other communities. But by then, the damage was done. He was different from the kids around him. He didn't laugh the same way. He didn't share the same innocence. He kept his distance, hiding the thoughts that had already taken root inside his mind. When he became a young man, Israel joined the army. He served in the late 1990s and early 2000s, stationed in places like Washington and North Carolina. Fellow soldiers described him as quiet but friendly, a man who could share a drink, crack a joke, and then sit in silence for hours. To them, he was unremarkable. To Israel, it was training. He was learning discipline. He was learning patience, and most importantly, he was learning how to blend in. When his service ended, Israel moved back into small towns across America. He worked as a contractor, fixing houses, doing carpentry. He built a business, raised a daughter, and smiled at his neighbors. No one suspected that when he wasn't working, he was planning crimes with the precision of a soldier. Unlike most killers, Israel didn't act on impulse. He didn't go after people he knew. He avoided creating a pattern. He avoided his hometown. Instead, he would fly across the country, rent a car, and drive for hundreds of miles. He picked small towns where no one would recognize him. The most chilling detail? He buried what he called kill kits, buckets filled with duct tape, rope, weapons, even bottles of Drano to clean up evidence. He would bury them in random places, sometimes years before he used them. Then, when the time was right, he would return, dig them up and carry out his plans. This meant that his crimes weren't random. They were rehearsed. They were prepared long in advance. And the FBI didn't even know his name. For years, Israel Keyes moved like a ghost. A father by day, a predator by night. He smiled at his daughter, laughed with customers, and then disappeared on trips where no one knew what he was really doing. The first time the FBI came close to him, they didn't even realize it. In 2012, an 18-year-old woman named Samantha Koenig disappeared from Anchorage, Alaska. She had been working the late shift at a small coffee stand. Security footage later revealed the horror. A masked man approached, pointed a gun, and forced her into his truck. Within minutes, she was gone. The town panicked. Flyers went up everywhere. Volunteers searched the woods, rivers, and back roads. Samantha's family begged for answers. The FBI joined in, but every lead went cold. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. Then, weeks later, Samantha's family received a rosters and some note. Along with it, a photograph of Samantha, her eyes open, her body propped up, as if she was still alive. The family's hope returned. They believed she was being held captive and could still be rescued. But what they didn't know was far worse. By the time the photograph was taken, Samantha was already gone. Israel had staged the image to keep her family in the dark. For the FBI, this was a turning point. They realized that they were facing someone who was more than a kidnapper. This was someone who planned his crimes with cold precision. Someone who could fool even trained investigators. And they had no idea that Samantha's case was only the tip of the iceberg. As the weeks passed, the FBI followed the trail of Samantha's debit card. It was being used hundreds of miles away in states far from Alaska. Surveillance cameras caught glimpses of a man at ATMs, his face hidden under a mask, his movements cautious but quick. Finally, in Texas, they got their chance. Police pulled over a white rental car. Inside was Israel Keyes. In his possession were the items that tied him directly to Samantha's disappearance. The FBI had caught their ghost. But even in handcuffs, Israel wasn't panicked. He wasn't angry. He wasn't scared. He smiled. He told investigators that he would talk, but only on his terms. And when he did, he revealed something no one was prepared for. Samantha wasn't his only victim. She was just the most recent. As the FBI sat across from him, listening to his calm, steady voice, they realized the truth. For years, Israel Keyes had been traveling across the United States, choosing victims at random and leaving almost no evidence behind. He had been living in the shadows, one step ahead of law enforcement, outsmarting them at every turn. The small-town handyman, the quiet father, the friendly neighbor, he was none of those things. He was a predator who had built his life around secrets. And the most terrifying part, he was about to but that night, sitting across from the man they had finally caught, the FBI had no idea just how many secrets he was about to unleash, and no idea how many victims might never be